is activism to you?
Activism is protesting for what you believe in.
Activism to me is people coming together for one movement, to have one voice and speaking out on it to make a change.
Taking action towards something you believe in to affect like a social change.
For me, activism is voicing your beliefs and taking action and responsibility for what you want in the world.
And that's taking a stand to make change, positive change, by organizing either protests, things like that.
Protesting or advocating against like bad politics, stuff like that.
So obviously everybody interprets activism in their own special way. They all have their own definitions, and here's mine. I'd say activism is when someone uses whatever platform they possess to campaign for change pertaining to specific social, environmental, or political issues. Activism may take many forms. Commonly, when we think of activists, we think of an individual or group of people holding up signs and protest against different issues. Although if this form of activism isn't particularly the type you like to take part in, it doesn't mean you're not an activist. Whether you're protesting outside of City Hall or sending a sternly written letter to someone inside, as long as you're using your voice to speak out against something you believe is wrong or defending something that you believe is right, you are advocating, which in turn makes you an activist. There's no specific way an activist looks. Different demographics may be more likely to advocate for something more than the other, but a big-time lawyer can be an activist just as easily as your local coffee shop barista. I think activism is totally relative, and I wouldn't say that there are any wrong or right sides of activism. Think of someone who might be an activist for a Second Amendment right. If they so choose to appear at a politician's rally whose campaign is based on passing strict gun laws and our Second Amendment right activist shows up to protest him, that's him displaying activism in his own way. I might not agree with what he's advocating, but they are using their voice to speak against or for something they believe in, which is activism, technically. At times, certain forms of activism can be dangerous. Not all forms put you at risk, though there are a few forms that may not be safe. Depending on the type of activism you participate in, it may come with high risks. Usually occurring during protests in large groups, law enforcement units might be deployed to keep the protests from becoming too hectic. At times, even this results in battles between protesters and police officers. Some protesters have been severely hurt during rallies. Plenty of fights have broken out, and civilians have even been tear gassed, along with more unpleasant things. Some may be willing to hurt others in protests as well. Monkey wrenching, the act of sabotaging something usually in the form of protest, could be purposefully done to potentially harm someone. Take the act of spiking trees. Not only may the saw malfunction because of it, but the malfunction of the saw could severely harm the person using the saw. Maybe not the most common act of protest, but it occurs nonetheless. Not only may activism cause people physical injury, but it also could impair them in their personal lives. Many have even lost their jobs because of associating themselves with certain activist groups, but all this may well be worth the sacrifice of such outcomes to make sure that their voices are heard to inspire change. Me considering myself an activist has always been something I've pondered about. With actually gathering my thoughts, contemplating what actually makes someone an activist, I'd say I am. Maybe not the type that physically protests in the streets, what I call a center stage activist, but in a way that I like to call backstage activism, where I spread my knowledge of important social, political, and environmental issues to the uneducated, whether it be through social media or having a conversation with a stranger curious about certain issues. You never know who you might make aware of these issues or who you can affect.